Before I learned the art, a punch was just a punch, and a kick just a kick. After I learned the art, a punch was no longer a punch, a kick no longer a kick. Now that I understand the art, a punch is just a punch, and a kick is just a kick. Bruce Lee. DC Tribe, Josh Thomas, thanks for being here. I want to talk about that quote here in a minute, but I want to remind you, if you have not ever heard another episode of this podcast, I have a personality profile assessment called the Do Zone DNA. I would love it if you would go take that. Learn a little bit more about how you get stuff done so you can build the world around you for optimal performance. DoZoneDNA.com is the website where you can go learn more about that. Once again, that's DoZoneDNA.com. Now let's talk about this quote. Someone shared this with me, and it was, at the time, it was one of those things that I just needed to process and kind of chew on for a long time. And it made a heck of a lot of sense. And it also was confusing and used circular logic. So like, okay, which is it? And so what it really says is I actually did study martial arts. Now, I don't know that I became a master by any means. I did receive a black belt in Shotokan. But that was half a life ago. And what I take from this, as far as a martial arts perspective, is I had never studied karate before, and I'm thinking, okay, it's just, you punch and you kick. There's nothing to it. And then when I started studying karate, I realized that, oh, no, there's a technique. There's a certain way that you have to do it. And, it's not just a kick. It's got to be the right way. And so I study and I study and I study. And once I get to the black belt level, and again, I wouldn't call myself a master, but I did study for 4 years. Once I get to this black belt level, I start to realize I'm not thinking so much about the technique of the punch, because that's become what a punch is to me. It's just a punch. But I went through all of that filter and all of that time to understand that that's what a punch is, not what I thought a punch was before. So that's an oversimplification, okay? But that's the idea, and it's my understanding and my interpretation of this quote. A punch is just a punch until you start learning, and then you realize, no, a punch is not just a punch, and a kick's not just a kick. But once you figure it out, a punch is just a punch, and a kick's just a kick. Okay. Now, how do we apply that to our lives? Let's think about the first time that you fall in love. Falling in love, a kiss is just a kiss, right? It is exactly whatever you imagine and dream that it is. And then you get in there and you realize, like, oh, well, once you've kissed somebody, oh, well, this is actually way different than what I expected it was. And there's all different kinds of ways that you can kiss. And there's good kissing and there's bad kissing. And then once you've kissed like 1,000 different people over the last, over 20 years or something, you're like, I already know how to kiss, and a kiss is a kiss. You can apply this to literally anything. You switch punch with kiss. You switch punch with, doing your taxes. You switch punch with, getting married and being in a relationship. All of these things kind of have perspective based on where you are in the learning arc. How do you apply this to a business perspective? So if you are an employee, there is this certain kind of image that you have of an entrepreneur or running your own business. It looks a certain way to you. Maybe it's a little bit glorified. Maybe it's like, oh yeah, that's no problem. That's super easy. I can figure that out. I can do that. And then you get into it and then you realize, oh, actually, this is not at all what I expected it to be. It's actually way harder, or it's way more fun, or it's way more stressful, or it's way more something different than what I expected. And only after you get the reps and you've done those reps over and over and over again, do you realize that, okay, well, look, it's just running a business. This is how running a business is. And I'm just kind of talking through this. As you know, when I do my solo episodes, I just have the prompt. I don't do any pre-planning. I don't have a script. And as I'm talking through this, I really start to realize, I start to understand what this quote really means. And it basically is, the definition of something really just depends on where you're standing. How something looks changes based on your location, your angle, your perspective. And once you develop an understanding of what something is, you start to see that it is totally different than what you anticipated or expected before. And once you go through that process of realization, you're able to zoom back out on the other side and say, okay, this is my new understanding of what something actually is. And it's not really that complicated because I already went through the process of figuring it out. So I want you to really think, and I don't want to punch or kick this to death, if you will. But I really want you to think today, if you're listening to this episode, what is something in your life that you believe is just what it is? And then ask yourself the question, do I believe this is just what it is because I don't actually know what it is? Or do I believe this is just what it is because I've already gone through the painful process of figuring it out? Because I'll repeat the quote one more time, and I want you to apply whatever it is in your life that you need to process and understand meaning in place of what Bruce Lee says. Because Bruce Lee says, before I learned the art, a punch was just a punch, and a kick just a kick. After I learned the art, a punch was no longer a punch, a kick no longer a kick. Now that I understand the art, a punch is just a punch, and a kick is just a kick. That'll do it for this episode of the Do Zone Solos. I really appreciate you. Please share this episode with somebody that you think would find it meaningful. And don't forget to go to dozonedna.com to take your personality profile assessment specifically built for entrepreneurs. Until next time, hey, go do something. Go punch something. Go kick something.